Prepper podcast, recorded November 21st, 2019. My name is Ian, and I live on a small hobby farm in BC. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, reloader, and my farm's designated handyman. Eric's unable to join us tonight. He decided to put his family first. What a jerk.
What a guy. I'm Alan. My friends and family call me a safety nerd. Background as a first responder, developed my mind for safety. I teach first aid, coach my family and friends to be better prepared. I'm a locksmith by trade and have worked in the physical security industry for more than 20 years now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler. I'm a new guest on the podcast here. I'm 25 years old, and I'm broadcasting from my 5-acre homestead here in northwestern Wisconsin, USA. I grew up on a small hobby farm in Minnesota, raising a variety of livestock, including pigs, goats, chickens, horses, cows, and much more. Upon completion of high school, I went on to receive my bachelor's degree in agricultural engineering. After being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis at 19, I began to refocus my life and take a serious look at the food crisis and civil unrest our world is facing. Since purchasing my first house, I've been working to turn my property into a self-sufficient homestead with an emphasis on preparedness.
That was an agricultural engineer, is that right?
That's correct. Yep, agricultural engineering.
Not an afternoon engineer, as Ian introduced us.
So my autocorrect called you an afternoon engineer, and I was like, "What is exactly an afternoon engineer?" Like, thanks, Apple. That's a great job you did there. Anyway, well, there's probably some hangover jokes in there somewhere, but anyway. So if you want to help support the show and keep Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, you can buy a Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt at www.rapidsurvival.com. All the proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled.
If you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Canadian Prepper Podcast and submit a review on iTunes or wherever you like. We also want to hear your feedback, good or bad. Let us know if there is a topic you want us to cover or if you like or dislike what we're doing. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, dad joke time. We have some reinforced content for you this episode. We're going to start off with some preparedness-related news articles. Next, we're going to let you know how we've improved our preparedness since our last episode, and then we'll get into the main topic for the episode, which is house fortifications for emergencies. News time.
I skipped the news because, the news sucks, and I'm trying to stay positive this week. So
there's no good news, is there?
There's never good news.
Doesn't seem like it these days.
Yeah, so I got a few. So the first one I start off with is turns out Canada has a debt issue. Who knew?
In things that surprise no one.
Yeah. So I guess in the last 4 years, I mean, I'm not going to point fingers, but anyway, in the last 4 years, turns out we've racked up more debt than ever before and reached a all-time high and this is adjusted for inflation and, in today's dollars and everything else, of all time for the country. For the average person, the debt levels are ludicrous. So
makes you feel proud, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess we're number one in something, and in the developed world, we have the highest per capita debt load now.
That's sweet.
That's awesome.
Just swell.
So, anyways, you can prepare accordingly for that one, I guess. Yeah, physical gold, lots of food storage, everything else. But yeah.
At the end of the day, the only precious metal will be lead.
That's true. Anyways, next one is actually might come into play for you there as well, Tyler. Is the harvest from hell. So we've still got millions of acres of canola, which is also known as rapeseed and a bunch of other terms, but it's our main oil crop under snow still.
Okay.
So, we have 2.7 million acres of canola that was left basically buried and unharvested this year, which is, I think, represents about 13 or 14% of the crop.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
I know the farmers here had a tough spring too. It just never stopped raining. They had a hard time getting everything in the ground, and it was kind of the same story this fall. I think finally, just now, it got cold there for a while, and the ground finally froze. They were able to get out and get all the corn and soybeans and stuff in. Yeah,
it's crazy. You had the flooding in the spring, and now you've got the early snow. So that's going to definitely affect food prices. Anything with canola oil, that's everything from veggie dips to cooking oil to, yeah. Just it's amazing how much stuff has canola oil in it. So
everything. It's like corn. Everything has corn in it. I know the field behind my house, which is rotating usually between soybeans and corn year over year. This year it was beans, and it didn't go in until July, and now it's December, and that field has not been touched. So I don't think those are being harvested this year for that exact reason.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of farmers around here too that just cashed in on insurance because there was no way they're going to ever get a long enough growing season out of it.
Well, and an interesting thing is that there were a whole lot of people around here that planted after the insurance cut off.
Really?
Interesting.
So that is,
And they don't get in any trouble for that, or?
Well, I mean, as long as you harvest, you don't get in any trouble for it.
I suppose, yeah.
It could prove to be a problem this time of year.
Right.
So this article I'm definitely going to share on the other podcast as well. But last one I put in here was Quebec is going to be out of propane in a few days. So
just like in general.
Yeah. So the funny thing is I'm trying to dance around the political aspect for the other podcast, but from the preparedness aspect, they decided they didn't want a pipeline going into Quebec. So they decided to transport everything by train.
Right.
So that includes all the propane supplies. Well, the train people are on strike now.
Yep. So
basically all their bulk propane shipments have stopped, and they only have a 3.5 day supply of propane left in the cold season. So they're, and of course last week they were busy telling Alberta to go get stuffed and how they didn't want their dirty oil and oil products, and rail was just a fine way of doing things, and now not even a week later they're kind of in dire straits. So there's a lot to be said there, but from the supply aspect, they're almost sort of propane, so having your own stockpile might not be a bad idea.
Always good to have on hand. Yeah, I guess if you're tuning in from the States, you probably haven't heard much else other than the impeachment inquiry. That's all I've seen on the news. I don't even know what to say about that, but I can't keep up with it, to be quite honest.
The problem is that both sides seems to think they're winning at this exact moment.
Yeah, it's just a he said, she said, if you ask me. And I sit down and read the news for 30, 40 minutes a day while I'm on break at work and stuff, and I can't even keep up with it then. And I don't know.
Well, it's typical politicians of both stripes. I mean, you can tell they're lying because their mouth is moving, but
right.
It's I'm almost to the point now where I think I'd actually pay extra just to not watch some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's what I've done. Just kind of started to tune out. But on a more positive note, just last night in the local paper, article reads: Sheriff secures military-grade equipment for deputies. Just read a few sentences out of here. Polk County deputies are better prepared to perform their duties today due to the federal 1033 asset sharing program. This program guarantees the free use of excess military-grade equipment for local police departments while only paying for shipping costs. And they talked about getting grade A medical kits, scopes, and lights.
The problem is that people read medical grade and think that that's something super heavy duty, but what it really means is really cheap to mass produce, right, and disposable.
Yeah. Oh, military grade, you mean?
Yeah.
Or built by the lowest bidder. That's the other way.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Everything's built by the lowest bidder. That's just a given.
Yeah. So it's I mean, there's a fine line between, is it going to increase the authoritarian police state, or is it just going to be like help them do their job better, which in this case obviously it is, right? And
hopefully.
I mean, you would hope that having more medical equipment and maybe some night vision might actually help them do their job better, so which is good.
Exactly. Yep.
So. You would think.
All right. Well, what we've done lately for preps is coming up next here. So we actually have a review pending on the Get Out, Stay Out campfire grill. We're just waiting on that one to show up. I just got some word on that one.
Fantastic. You were showing us some pictures. It looks like it's being actually put through its paces pretty thoroughly.
Yeah. So looking forward to the Transport Canada Guru giving us a review on that one. Hint, hint. And other than that, I guess we should move on to what we've actually done. Al?
This week, last couple of weeks, since the last episode, because it has been a while, met up actually with Eric. He acquired a new shotgun. I acquired some new communication equipment as a result of that meetup, as well as a couple of beers going down range and things like that. But so that was fun. So we've improved our communication ability. Not without relying on cell phone grids. Got some more work done on my car, so it's running in tip-top shape. Fixed up all of our winter gear bags so that all the cars are ready to be stranded if need be, or ready to stay in town so we don't have to make the run back. Not sure how that's going to work this year. We did that a few times last year when the weather was bad, but we didn't have a dog last year, so hopefully that's going to become our last resort, and we're planning to avoid that as much as we can. Otherwise, got get some renovations done around the house. Again, make it a little bit more sustainable and user friendly in the event of an emergency, which is always the number one goal. So that's what I've gotten up to.
Sounds like
as
you've
well
been
as some
busy.
more training. Well, and training in with that as well. I got emergency management. So the American FEMA system has an IMS or incident management system, and I've got half a dozen courses to do for that for my my first response gig, and that will so that's kind of improving my ability to step back and see the big picture in an emergency rather than just focus on the individual tasks to be done.
Cool. Well, as for myself, you just reminded me. Actually, we got a third dog since our last episode. So we have the large one for the outside work, the medium-sized one for the actual deterrence, and then the third one is basically just a glorified doorbell because she's about 2.5 pounds. But one of the reasons we got her is because easy to handle. She's actually the best car traveler we have. Doesn't eat any food. She eats about 2 pellets per day, it seems. But yeah, no, it's been a good actually addition to the house. So very easy to train that little one.
Nice.
Yeah. So I missed the dog episode anyway, but yeah, that was kind of a big deal for us. So it's been fun.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly, we assembled a rain shelter here to keep some stuff from rusting, which is about a 16 by 32 rain shed.
Nice.
And that was pretty good. That was on top of that quad garage I built. And then see here, I changed the oil in the large generator, the log splitter, the pressure washer, and the farm tractor, also known as the quad. Let's see here, burned some underbrush that was collected up around the ground just to keep the fire hazard down, and collected up next year's kindling because of that. So I got 2 big piles of that. Went to the range for some practice because I hadn't been to the range for a while, not nearly enough anyway. And then see here,
is there ever enough at the range?
No, and I have to. It's so funny because I actually had to rush to get it done in this during my summer vacation, which happened in October this year. I'd actually rushed just to get an afternoon at the range, and it was kind of sad that in 3 weeks that's all I could do. But anyway, so I stockpiled some chicken feed just to get stocked up for the winter, and then we actually had a local producer slaughter off and sell us half a local pig.
Oh,
so
nice.
That was cool. So we got a freezer full of everything from bacon to chops to whatever, a lot of ground pork. So, but got it at, I would call it about half the grocery store price, and it's basically organic and well fed. And we actually we saw the pig growing up from day one, and it's it's nice meat.
Oh,
nice.
Good deal.
That's good.
Yeah, so that's it for me.
Yeah, so for me, been busy here getting ready for winter on the farm. Cut, split, stacked about 14 full cords of firewood. We heat with an outdoor wood boiler, so we burn through usually about 10 cords a winter. Along with the firewood, I've got a pretty good sized brush pile going in the backyard from trimming up some trees last year. So trying to take advantage of burning that up this winter, and been doing some more trail clearing and forest management in the woods to make room for some animals coming onto the homestead in the spring. Got all the wood done, so I went through, serviced the chainsaw, sharpened my extra chains. Going along with heating the house, I purchased an old wood stove off Craigslist for, I think paid $100 for it. Got that all restored and repainted, and then I hooked that into the existing chimney. So that'll be a backup source of heat because the outdoor wood boiler needs electricity for the water pump and the furnace and the fans and everything else. So and going along with the heat sources, my fiance runs her own soap making business out of our attached garage, but unfortunately there is no heat or ductwork in there. But she got an early birthday Christmas present. She got a nice portable DeWalt propane heater as a gift, and I tell you what, I highly recommend that thing. It works awesome. So it just runs off the 20-volt DeWalt batteries, and it's supposed to run for 6 hours. And just hooks into your regular 25-pound propane cylinders. That thing works great.
Is that like a catalytic heater of some sort?
Yeah, it's just like a torpedo heater. It's a little bit smaller. I think it's 73 or 78,000 BTUs. But it heats up that garage good. It's a 24 by 24 garage, and it'll take it up 40 degrees in 20-30 minutes.
That's 40 degrees Fahrenheit for the rest of us out there, which
right.
is about 15 degrees Canadian. 15 degrees Canadian.
Yep. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so do you need to have a window open for that, or?
No, it burns clean. We put a fire or a smoke alarm in there and a CO detector, and it says right on the box it's safe to clean. They recommend ventilation, but you can always crack a window. But we've been running there for a few days now, and it's been good.
Cool.
Interesting. Well, that's good.
Yeah, a few other things. Set up some long-term food storage shelves in the basement. Planning to get into canning, preserving and stuff next summer. One thing we've been doing on that line is we made 8 quarts of kimchi not long ago, and that's like we season it with hot sauce, or it's like a hot seasoning packet, but it's Napa cabbage, and then you add salt water, you let it ferment for 24 hours or so, and then you add some vinegar, and then you just put it in cans in the fridge. That stuff's really good. And then another thing we've been doing is playing around with some homemade indoor hydroponics. Got a couple grow lights in the mail just a few days ago, so I got some shelves set up in the basement for that. And then my fiance got back a few weeks ago from an elk hunting trip out in Montana. She took down a nice cow elk, brought home about 320 pounds of meat, so we got that in the freezer now.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Elk is still my favorite of all the game meat out there.
I tell you what, it's the first time I've had elk, and it is awesome. We've been eating nothing but that for like the last 3 weeks. It's been great. And then I guess the last thing I did the last few weeks was saved up a few $100 over the summer and built myself a get home bag. I got a 40-mile commute to work, so it's a little bit more along the lines of a bug out bag, but built that a few weeks ago, and well, it was nice out. We were taking walks just a few miles from a river here, so we were taking walks down the river with that and just getting some good exercise. And
right on.
Yeah, that's about it.
That's a fair amount, so that's good.
Yeah, it's been busy.
All right, main topic time. So moving on to the main topic of the show. Let's see here. I guess, Alan, you want to start us off?
Well, I mean, we can certainly do this as a Q&A. I've put a few notes in. I mean, our average everyday life, and we'll talk about the reasonable scenarios, of course, when the rule of law no longer applies, all these guidelines go out the window. But for average everyday life, the criminal goes for an easy target. So if your particular domicile looks harder to access than your neighbors, you're probably safe. That said, if you are a target, if somebody wants into your property, they're going to get in. That is a simple fact of life. The best we can do is keep them on the outside long enough for the good guys to come and take care of the bad guys. So, to be prepared for extremes, start with your outer perimeter. Open flat land as much as possible. The further out you can see without obstruction, the further you can see people coming. Don't let them sneak up on you. If you can build your house on a hill and put a high up point where there's no blind spots, you can see 360 degrees as far as possible. 200, 500 yards would be awesome if I had my choice. So finding a big patch of land, put a house right in the middle of the field, and be able to see all around me with a little bird's nest up there would be, ideal. Of course, we're living in a reality, not our fantasy land, but that would be the proper way to do it.
Well, historically, that's the way that people have tried to do it, right? Top of the hill, lots of notice that they're coming, and
absolutely. Castles are built on high elevations for a reason, right? Castles have turrets for that reason. Even ships on the water, right? They had the bird's nest or the crow's nest up at the top of the mast, so you could see further.
Yeah. Oh, I just think about it, even from a practical perspective, like VHF coverage or UHF coverage, you're going to get better line of sight distance if you're going to have a antenna at the top of a hill too. So if you're a ham radio guy, that's another bonus, right?
Yeah. So there's lots of good reasons to do that. So if you can, put your house in the middle of a field and a nice long driveway, and put it up high. That way people can't sneak up on you. The outer edge of your perimeter should be a thicket of tall, hard, thorny bushes. A couple of access points so you can get through, but the denser and thornier it is, the more you're going to make people go through the way that you want them to go, and so you can see it.
Yeah. So do you have any recommendations for the types there, or I was going to kick in a couple there?
I mean, the generalized briar patch is good. Roses look nice and provide like rose vines and bushes provide a kind of a more low key.
Lilac bushes are
protection.
Really quick too, and they bloom out pretty.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, so lilac bushes, right? So it's what the rule is, like you want it thick. I mean, even cedar bushes, right? If you plant them close together, they get thick, they intertwine, they're hard to break through, and either people have to work harder to get through it, or they have to go through the space that you designate.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you bring up a good point with the roses. I mean, even in the good times, you're going to be a good neighbor and have nice, pretty rose bushes, and in the bad times that they're just as effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
I was going to actually say locally we have these Himalayan blackberries that the vines have got to be like your thumb width thick and huge thorns on them. And plus it's a food source, but also the roses will attract the deer too, which is good. Yep. So there's a couple of bonus points there, but a hawthorn is another one that you can put underneath your windows or on the perimeter just to keep people away from the areas you don't want them to go to.
Right.
Yep. And I mean that works with any kind of wall essentially. I mean, if you're gonna go to that extent, you're gonna build a wall, you're gonna build a fence, whatever it is. You're making people go through the points that you control, so that you can see what's happening. Couple of access points, make them go where you want. That way you can see someone approaching, and you can take care of that threat by whatever means suits you at the time. Mm-hmm. We will not get into those details.
Well, in normal time, it's just a 911 call, right?
Yep. And when seconds count, the police are only minutes away.
That's right.
But that's a discussion for another podcast.
That's right.
So your walls are your last line of defense. So another thing, and I kind of forgot to put it in the notes here, but another point is that you want to be able to light that area really well. Shadows are your enemy. So I live out in the country, and on a good day, like on a good night, I can't see my neighbor's house.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
yeah,
you mentioned that.
Put a couple motion lights in, guys. That's what we got around here. A few motion lights, one on the front porch, got one back out on the wood stove. So if anybody comes up to any entrance, light's going to kick on. They're there. Usually you'll scare them away.
Well, I mean, Costco sells those solar powered ones that, I mean, they're $30-$40 tops, and they last pretty much forever, and they're good with power outages because they're solar, and they with the LEDs they do light up a fairly good area. So I mean that's a pretty solid choice there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's keep your area well lit so that you can see what's going on around you. And then we bring it into your inner perimeter, which is your walls. Those are your last line of defense. Brick is fine. Concrete is better. Stick framing with pretty much anything over it, whether it's stucco or siding, resists basically nothing. So in terms of actual somebody has gotten that close to your property.
Right. It's not stopping a bullet. That's what you're saying.
Well, it's definitely not stopping a bullet, but I mean, we talked about it in another episode. I forget which one Hughes was mentioning it. Like, you can break into most modern houses with an X-Acto knife.
Oh yeah.
Just because you've got siding over insulation, over vapor barrier, over drywall, and that's the only thing separating the inside from the outside. Like, they don't even bother sheathing it anymore.
Right.
So I mean, ICF, right? We're working on a series coming up. Stay tuned for probably the new year. ICF, or ejected concrete forming, will resist a whole lot and provide an excellent. It really is probably your best choice if you're building a house for. Can't rot, doesn't let rodents through, provides an excellent R value, like it's incredibly efficient, all those wonderful things, and it also keeps the bad guys on the outside. Realistically, your doors and windows are the most vulnerable point of attack. If I had my choice and I was building a house that was designed to resist people, I would use 16 gauge steel stiffened hollow metal doors with steel stiffeners, and 12 gauge steel frames that were backfilled with concrete.
Okay, so you have to fill me in. I know how gauges work with shotguns. Okay. How do they work with steel? So
with gauges, the smaller the number, the thicker the steel. Right. So a 20 gauge hollow metal door. So hollow metal is the generalized industry term for a door that's usually about 1 3/4 inches thick, sometimes a little bit thicker. It's two skins with something in the middle, and then it's welded together. A 20 gauge hollow metal door is about the lightest you're going to get. That's essentially it's about the same thickness as your car door panels.
Okay.
It'll provide a fire resistance rating, but a good can opener will overcome it. 18 gauge is pretty standard in commercial use, at least in this part of the world. I know a lot of places are going to 20 gauge for standard because it's cheaper, but 18 gauge for the longest time is good. It's that's fairly heavy duty commercial use. It's going to last for a really long time. And then 16 gauge is not quite your thickest available, but pretty close. I've used 16 gauge doors in detention facilities where those doors are going to get beaten on. The steel stiffeners inside are essentially a 16 gauge steel again, but it's a C channel that gets welded to the front and back.
Okay.
To both sides of the door.
Yeah.
And those doors weigh about 250 pounds a piece, and they'll resist a forklift. Like they're pretty heavy duty. Again, the door is rarely the weakest point. It's usually the frame, which is why I would go with a good heavy gauge, like a 14 gauge steel stiffened frame or a 14 gauge reinforced frame, and then backfill it with something. Because again, with most break-ins, it's not the door that fails, it's not the lock that fails, it's the jam.
Yep. Cheap way to upgrade is just put some 3-inch screws in the hinges. Take the little tiny ones you get out with the door. Yep. There should be two 2x4s stacked up behind that door, so you should have 3 inches of wood to screw in there. You might as well take advantage of it.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we've talked about this before on another episode. If you peel the trim off the inside of your door and throw some slotted angle or some angle iron behind it, and then screw through the face of your jam into those studs with those 3 or 4 inch screws, you're gonna make that door really hard to break down.
Yep.
Again, nothing's impossible, but our goal is to slow them down long enough to be able to accumulate or to be able to gather a response. So that is those are my resisting the brute force attack. Same with your windows, right? The glass is pretty. Glass is not a security item. Your best bet is to put a break resistant film on it. The best films are, I think, 10 millimeter thick. I'm sorry, I don't know the conversion off the top of my head into inch, but that's 10 mil is just shy of a 1/4 inch. I think.
No, it's over. It's about 3/8.
3/8, yeah. So it's a good thick film. It sticks to the glass. You anchor it with a structural caulking to the frame, and then anytime if somebody breaks the glass, it's still being held together, and it'll take an absolute beating.
Wow.
The only problem, well, I was gonna say the only problem with that security film I find is it usually has that mirror finish as well, right?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, because some of it does, but
some of it does, absolutely, and you can make that choice when you're getting it. Buy it from not to throw out a sponsor here because they don't sponsor us, but 3M makes the best stuff out there. They kind of invented it, and if you look at their YouTube videos, they will literally have guys. I've done this. I've actually participated in this test where they will literally have 2 guys with 20-pound sledgehammers just wailing away on these windows, and it holds together.
Wow. Because I was gonna say, the beard stuff is a problem actually, because it looks cool during the day when somebody can't see in your house, but the problem is that means that at night you can't see out. Yeah. Because it basically the brightest part or brightest side is the one that can't see. Yeah. So it works both ways, unfortunately.
Yeah. So just make sure that you're taking that into consideration when you're choosing your film, because some of them do that, but those are usually the UV films.
Yeah.
And these are specifically security films, which have a different approach to them and a different use. I've known people who have put UV film on the outside and the security film on the inside, and you're basically making an impenetrable wall there. So that takes care of your weakest points.
I guess another play on the windows there. At least keep some curtains drawn. Keep your shades down. Keep people from seeing in. I guess that's the easiest, cheapest thing to do.
Don't make yourself a target.
Goes without saying, but kind of needs to be said too.
It always needs to be said. Nothing goes without saying when you're being prepared. We don't need pipelines. We have train cars.
That's right.
So that takes care of your big weak points. The next thing to look at would be the locks that hold especially your doors shut. With windows, there are not a lot of great locks there. The best, especially the patio doors and windows, sliding windows, the best thing that I've ever found in all my years of lock work and security work and responding to break-ins, the things that have worked the best are some variation of a piece of broom handle stuck in the track.
Right.
Whether that's a piece of broom handle or, if you're Canadian, a piece of a hockey stick, whatever it is. a piece of something that physically keeps the door from moving is your best bet. I found the best deterrent is to take that piece of whatever, paint it the brightest safety orange or green that you can, make it really obvious that there's something there. Makes you less of a target.
Yep.
Oh, hey, I shouldn't bother trying to break into this because I know I'm never going to move that window. I'm going to move on somewhere else. So when we're looking at locks, the least that is exposed on the outside, the better, right? The smallest, it gives you the smallest attack surface. Look for something that is a UL 437 listed deadbolt. If you're looking for the best protection possible, so the UL Underwriter Laboratory standard 437 is the international standard for attack, pick, and drill resistance, and that is the super nerdy term for making it really hard to break into. So something that's called a high security deadbolt. Those are designed, if they are installed according to the manufacturer's instructions, to resist approximately 20 to 30 minutes of sustained attack by a trained person, which means the average criminal is not getting through there.
Right? So you probably saw those in Die Hard when they're trying to drill the safe.
Yeah, exactly. I actually started my annual Die Hard marathon last weekend. We watch all the movies, but
it's not Christmas till Hans Gruber falls from Nakatomi Plaza, right?
Exactly. So those are the best way to slow somebody down. It puts ball bearings at the drill points, so the things that hold, the screws that hold the lock together. If you can put a ball bearing in the end of the hole where the screws go in, you're going to make it harder to drill out. What all the standard drill points, you put steel chips or like stainless chips or ball bearings, you're going to make it harder to attack. 3 deadbolts per door, so 4 latching points. In my perfect scenario, I've got the standard deadbolts at the the standard lock at the standard height for convenient use. A deadbolt about 6 inches above it, and then I've got a deadbolt at 18 inches from the top of the door and 18 inches from the bottom of the door. And what that's going to do is that's going to spread the attack force of a battering ram or a foot or a bearcat or whatever somebody's trying to ram through the side of my house out across the biggest area possible. That then makes your hinge the weakest point, which means you need to put the heavy duty hinges on, and just like with the strike that's being screwed into the frame behind the stud behind the jamb, you're going to take that and run big long screws through your hinges into your jamb as well, or into your studs as well, and that's going to keep the whole system together long enough for you to drop boiling oil from your second floor window onto these people. Because if we're going to go medieval, we're going to go all the way medieval.
I was waiting for that one. I didn't even think of that one, but it's pretty good.
I mean, we could go Home Alone and have all kinds of crazy ways to do it. But I mean, the direct approach is usually the best. Whatever boiling oil flamethrower combination you can think of is not a bad idea. I mean, we could have fun for days with booby trapping and whatever of your property, but we'll try and talk at least reasonably realistic about this. The other thing is to take care of the gap between the door and the jamb. So it has to be there, otherwise the door and the jamb don't fit together. There's usually about an 1/8 inch gap, and especially if your door swings out. Now most residential doors swing into the building, but if your door happens to swing out, you need to make sure you cover that gap. If you're using the hollow metal doors that I would appreciate everybody using, and that's not just because I sell hollow metal for a living, weld a 2-inch wide 1/8 inch plate around the three sides. So avoid the hinge side, because otherwise the door won't open. If you weld a plate all the way around, you cover up that gap. Now you can't get a tool in to open the door. And
like
I'm here to tell you, yeah, or I mean, even just a pry bar. But I mean, one of the most common ways. There was a time before we started doing that. There's a time when what people would do is they'd go down to the local TSC or or hardware store, or, country store, buy a 10-ton come along, hook it up to the back of a pickup truck, jam it into the top corner of the door, and just start winching, and then eventually that door would pop open. But if you cover that gap, it doesn't matter what you can't get a tool in there to do anything with it. So whether it's a Halligan bar or a pry bar or whatever, again, we're making it as difficult as possible to get into that. That is kind of my big thing. One kind of big asterisk on all of this is that the harder you make it to get in, the harder it is to get out in an emergency. I forget where it was, and I was trying to make time to do the research for this before the episode, and I just didn't. There was a fort, and I want to say it was in Malta, and it was if it was Malta and it was the fort I'm thinking of, it was occupied by the Knights Templar at the time, and it was impenetrable. And eventually, what they did was they just burned the place down. They just started lobbing fireballs over the walls because they couldn't penetrate it, and just left them for dead. And then the people inside couldn't get out because it was so heavily fortified.
Yeah, that was one of the big points I had. Just keep your smoke alarms working, and keep any fire extinguishers on hand charged, because a hardened homestead's no good when it's burning down from the inside.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the big. that's I think I've covered most of it. And of course, be prepared to be hunkered down for a while if you do end up under some kind of serious threat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know you got a really good point there, actually. But I like your idea of keeping the threat outside the house, if at all possible. I mean, that's going to be at the end of my show notes, anyways. But yeah, like the idea of keeping a patrol or a good eye out, cameras, observation posts, anything to see the threat coming long before it becomes like an internal issue. I think that's the best offense. Well, defense, right?
Motion sensors in the ground are wireless. They're dirt cheap to install. You can put ground sensors around your property, 50 yards in all directions or however far out you want, and when when the dog's coming home, when he's being chased by something bigger, and when people are coming across the property. And then of course, if you've got your lights on motion sensors, all of a sudden if one of your lights turns on, then there's something up.
Yep. Yeah, we've got a wireless solar powered driveway alarm for our property. That thing works great, because that's really the only entrance onto our property. We got a long gravel driveway. From the time that alarm goes off, you've still got 20 seconds before they're up to the house in the car. So
yeah, actually, I'd never even seen one of those before until I was actually at my parents' place this summer. They have one sitting, and same idea. They got about a 30-second advance notice that somebody's coming down the driveway.
Right.
And my dad works at a hardware store, so I guess he had brought it home and decided to give it a whirl. So yeah, it was kind of neat, actually.
They're pretty inexpensive. I think ours was $40-$50 maybe.
Yeah.
And you can add on to them and add other sensors elsewhere and stuff. So.
Yep, and that's one of those low cost insurance things, and especially if you can control the entry points, then you know whenever somebody's coming onto your property.
Right.
Cool. So yeah, I mean, my points are kind of similar to Alan's, but I mean, my goal, and I guess in my mind, is primarily to deter. You're never going to keep anybody out forever, right? Whether it be burglars while you're gone, worst case scenario, without rule of law type of thing. I mean, the best you can really hope to slow them down only. I mean, historically, I think we mentioned the one fort there, but actually looked up the story of the Masada, which of course they've named a few things after since. But there's this big mountaintop fort in the desert in Israel, and they kept the Romans at bay for months. Actually, I think it was even years. And what got them in the end was water storage. They didn't have enough water. But I mean, so sooner or later, if you're in a fixed position, historically, no fixed position has ever maintained it against a sustained attack. So delaying is what we're looking at here. So
got to have all your other preps in order. Otherwise, if you gotta leave your house, it's no good to be hardened. So
well, and I kind of laughed when I read about the Masada there too, because water is what got them in the end. And I thought of our friend Eric there, who's got the well in his basement, and I was like, see, he'd be good.
He'd be good up until the well became poisoned, because that would be the next thing. And
well, exactly. There's always countermeasure, right? Like for a while there, they tried throwing dead cows over the walls to make people die of disease, right?
Yep.
And there's always something to do, right?
Well, that was a traditional Roman tactic, was to poison the tips of their arrows, usually with feces. And it wasn't the arrows that killed people; it was the disease afterwards, and then the disease spread among the ranks. And
yep.
You have died of dysentery.
Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah. So time is your enemy is what I'm getting at. So for my perimeters, a couple things that Alan didn't cover off, ditches. So the average county ditch, they have, courtesy of the government, is basically a nice, gentle U-shaped type of thing, and generally not, overly capable of keeping people out. But if you want to sharpen one edge of it, and basically have the old anti-tank style ditches where you basically have a nice slope going into the ditch, then a straight up and down wall. Somebody can drive into it and try and go that sideways or straight on. They're not going to be able to get up over that straight section. And it doesn't have to be a 10-foot thing either. But if you keep a ditch that's 2 or 3 feet high, all but the biggest Hummer, I guess, is going to be stopped by that, right? Yep. So if you don't have trees or thorn bushes or anything else on the edge of your property, that is one easy to accomplish thing. If you have a backhoe or lots of slave labor, I don't know. Can do ditches, but so barricades.
Didn't Sam Cooke write a song about that?
Yeah, it's just that's horrible stuff. But anyway, so barricades, same idea. So if you have a long gravel road or whatever, and you want to just keep people out, without rule of law, long-term, societal problems, just cut down a tree, throw a log across it, because at the very least you're gonna have to move it or cut it, and you're gonna hear them either way, and that'll give you a little bit of extra time. Yep. There's always the metal gate idea that goes up and down. You see them on forestry roads, everything else, that there's always some sort of metal gate post. One thing in Ontario that got me when I lived there was that, people would have this nice forested lot, they'd buy it, they'd knock down every single tree, and then once they built the house, they put one little stump up front. And so if you can at all do it and you're building a property, I guess, leave the forest intact around the edges, because that's a natural barrier right there, which again would, like to Alan's point, would force people to go in at certain spots of your choosing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
One thing around the property here I thought about doing, and the wife's been actually inspiring me on this one too, is the gabion walls. So what they are, have you guys heard of those?
No.
Okay, so what they are is basically a wire mesh, think chicken wire, but maybe just a little bit thicker gauge. And you basically do a couple wood frames, in the shape of a brick wall or a rectangle that has some vertical to it. And you just basically walk around, grab the rocks from your property, and throw them in these wire mesh baskets. They're also called Hescos in the military. Same idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yep.
So, but these are the civilian version. They're meant to be decorative. So you do these gabion walls, and they provide you a rock wall of your thickness of your choosing that is pretty much free for the sake of just a few posts and a little bit of chicken wire, and you can make up a nice rock wall that is everything proof.
Yeah, we see. I see those driving along the Trans Canada. They've been used to create barriers against the avalanches and such. Yep. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
So nobody's going to drive through those. People can hop them. That's where my next point comes in. So the fences idea. The ideal with a fence, I guess, would be have some sort of opaque fence that they can't see through. Of course, that means you can't see through it either if they're gathering on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the cameras might come in.
Mm-hmm.
But nice high fence that's either cast iron with spikes, or in my case, preferably, I would love to have some barbed wire on top. But careful, some provinces, maybe some states, do not allow barbed wire on top of your own personal fence.
Mm-hmm.
Ontario is one of them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Because I knew Manitoba was one, but out in BC and Alberta we're fine. You can actually buy razor wire and put it on top if you really wanted to, but that leads
you have to have special permits for it, and you can't do it in residential areas, and you can only have, it has to be over, I think the fence has to be over 7 feet high, which you can't do for a residential fence.
Yeah.
And so the barbed wire has to tip into your property.
Yeah, so it'd be a rural thing, and it'd be of course you have to be worried about liability, damaging your own stuff, and handling the stuff with the big thick leather gloves is not easy either, right?
Right.
Yep.
But the cast iron with spikes is decorative and cool looking at the same time.
It is.
Yeah.
There's a plant or a factory in this area that makes big, heavy armored vehicles for the military, and they have actually a really nice looking cast iron fence all the way around the property. It happens to be about 12 feet high and happens to arch out and be pointy at the end.
And it doesn't have to be pointy. If you're that's even an issue, you can always curve them over. So that
well, it is. It curves out, and then it's kind of spiky. But the fence just can't be scaled. Just because you can't grip anything. There's nothing. There's nowhere to put your hands or feet. There are no handholds. So it's an excellent system. Absolutely.
As a deterrence measure, not they're not going to keep them out. It might just deter some people. Is electrify your fence. I'm not saying lethal like charges. I'm not going to condone that right now, but like just horse fencing. Like it's like a car battery hooked up, and it's just enough to keep animals from pushing against the fence. So if somebody's peeing on the electric fence or grabbing it, they'll know it.
Yep.
Yeah, they have a lot of affordable solar powered options out there for that now too. So that might be another option.
Yeah. You mentioned the floodlights, Alan, but also like I think Eric's setup is infrared.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool because IR vision is actually digitally now. It's very cheap, and you can get IR floodlights from Amazon for like $30 now.
Yeah, that's crazy. And yeah, it does a great job.
Yeah, I mean, unlike night vision, I mean, somebody else with an IR scope can see you with an IR spotlight shining it around, but it's still something.
Yep.
So if you have IR spotlight and a digital vision scope, spotting scope, binoculars, I mean, it's something just to keep an eye on stuff, right?
Yep.
I mean, so my kids were also watching Aliens the other day, so the robotic sentries came to mind, but I don't think those are an option here in Canada. But machine guns.
I mean, but that's as simple as a Roomba with a GoPro on it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's really not that far out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, it's kind of funny actually when you think about it. But with the technology's progressed a lot. Dogs, of course, we mentioned that in the podcast that I missed there. But dogs are a fantastic perimeter security device because they might be a single use only in bad times because somebody may decide to take down your dog, but at least you'll have critical warnings. If they're willing to kill a dog, they're probably willing to hurt you. So so something to think about. So dogs. Cameras in good times, like if you guys have power systems, I mean, if they're going to have somebody on your property, at least you want to be able to prosecute them later on. So get your digital cameras going.
And that also, like a camera will also range you out further than you can see. So if you do have a natural blind spot in your perimeter, put a camera on it and then you can see where it is. You can see what's going on there. So it's not even a prosecution aspect. It can still be used as an early warning.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So this is where I kind of go into the LARPing business a bit, but I mean, there is some consideration to be given for patrols in bad times. And I don't mean like, going on a military, like long range patrol with your camo gear. It could be just as simple as checking on your neighbors, seeing if they've seen anything, exchanging information, just seeing if anybody set up a camp, 100 meters into the bush by your house, just to keep an eye on the property. Cause like you said, keep it as far away as possible.
Yeah, maybe even if it was really bad, you get together with a few neighbors and park an old truck at the end of each end of the road and just kind of lock down the whole block. I guess that'd be probably a great thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Farther away.
So, like, I was about to say the observation post. I mean, that's a tried and true method as well. Like, further out from the house, whether it be a foxhole or an RV or the back of a pickup truck. Yeah, it's just observation posts with a radio and a pair of binoculars can go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, of course, the higher up the better, because again, you can see further.
So yeah, this is one going to be a large asterisk, but because you can't do it in normal times and everything else. But there's always plenty of reading material out there on caltrops, which is like a spiky deterrent for the field around your house, man traps, whatever have you. But I'm not going to condone all those right now because it's normal times. So if they do get close enough to your house, I think we covered off most of it. Let's see here. Hurricane shutters, you kind of touched on those.
Yep.
I notice most of the schools have the money to do that, but the average Joe doesn't. But I mean, those things are fantastic. They kind of roll down, seal tight, and pretty awesome.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, the big challenge with those is that the installation more than anything. The cost of them is really not that expensive for a fairly light gauge, but they're not attractive. They're not subtle in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
They are there.
Well, I have a question for you too. Like, so you were talking about a bunch of security stuff for the windows. You know those those white kind of bar, like they're almost like an 8-shaped bar that goes in behind the window that you can kind of like swing out and put into place, then lock into place.
Yep.
I don't know, how do you describe those things?
It's just called a window bar. It's like a movable window bar. They're they do the job. My opinion is that a window film is better, simply because there's redundant layers of security, but if you've got window film, you don't need the bar. And if you don't have the window film and somebody does try and break into your house, then you have a big hole in your house that you have to deal with.
Yeah, well, and you're going to lose heat. You're going to lose everything else too. I mean, security bar, I kind of like the idea of like being able to just disconnect it, open it up, and get out. But by, like you said, if somebody's going to break the window anyways, now you got to deal with all sorts of other problems. So
yeah, and I mean the advantage of a security bar is that it's a deterrent, right? It's a really visible, it's a visible. Don't come here. You're going to have a hard time. That's why you'll see a lot of businesses still prefer security bars in the front over the window films, because the window films look nicer, but they're not the same visual deterrent that that the security bar gives, right? A security bar, you can see that from 20 paces away. That place is going to be harder to break into than its neighbor that doesn't have it. And it's all well and good to have a window film that's going to make a rock bounce, but you still have a broken window to deal with, rather than somebody just moving along in the first place.
Yeah,
I guess that point could kind of work against you too. If times are bad, bars on the windows are going to kind of say, "Hey, look over here. I've got stuff to protect."
I've got stuff worth protecting. Yeah.
Something to think about.
Well, that's where I used to use, like when I lived in the subdivisions, I'd use that spray on, like frosting spray for windows. So if your window's only looking at the next door neighbor's house, you don't have a view. The only thing you really want from there is light. So I, rather than looking at my neighbor in his family room, I decided to like use that frosting spray. So I still get the light. They can't see in. I can't see out, mind you. But by the same token, though, it still was functional for light purposes, at least. But at least it didn't tempt them with something to steal, right?
Yeah. Well, if it's high enough up or a small enough window that it's not a big threat, then it makes good sense.
Yeah.
Hide your stuff.
Yeah. I've touched on this before as well, but the medieval door timbers, like whatever you call them, the zombie bar. I think down at Lowe's they're about $2 a pop. You get those nickel-plated steel things will actually hold a 2x4 or angle iron or whatever. Poor man's way of doing it compared to you, but it was at least slowed them down.
It does the job. It's one of those high-speed, low-drag solutions, and I have had to penetrate doors that are protected by those before, and it resulted in getting the saw out and literally cutting the door in half and then the bar behind it. So it's definitely a deterrent. It will definitely slow somebody down.
Yeah. So I think you covered most of my stuff, actually, but you mentioned that most walls won't stop an X-Acto knife, let alone a bullet. But with that in mind, there's always the idea of like a reinforced walled room, like not so much a panic room, but if you want to put some steel up around a room to protect your loved ones, if somebody is actually trying to do a forcible entry.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of your last line of defense, is like within the house, right? Assuming that somebody's assuming that help is not coming and that person is intent on getting into your house, that wall is going to fail eventually, or that door is going to fail eventually, and you're going to need somewhere else to fall back to.
Yeah, even if you don't take action and do anything, at least put some thought into it. Which room in the basement would be the best? Which closet do you run to? Because in the heat of the moment, you're going to panic and you're going to freeze, and that's ultimately what leads to bad things. So,
and if you're planning a house, then plan for a room that is as far away from the common points of entry as possible, and you can reinforce that, right? Like you can build that wall with 2x6 studs instead of 2x4. You can put them close together. You can reinforce, or you can just build a block wall within the middle, which again is going to slow somebody down. And you can put a solid door in it instead of a hollow door. There are some pretty cool. If again, we're not, these people don't sponsor us, but I have some pretty in-depth personal knowledge about of a lock manufacturer called Sherlock McGill, SURE Lock McGill. It's a British company, and they designed these locks and doors to be blast resistant, because England and the Troubles and the IRA and all that good stuff. And there again, some really cool videos on YouTube of the City of London Police forcible entry team trying to penetrate this door. They just can't get it open. Like they'll go through a standard door faster than I can take my keys out of my pocket, and they're working on these doors for like 15-20 minutes, and they just can't get them open. So much so that like the New York subway system has started installing their doors and locks in their tunnels because they resist the air pressure changes and the vibration stuff. So if you're spending money on locks, it's not cheap, but that stuff is all like inch thick, solid stainless bar, multi-point locking systems. It's frankly, it's some pretty cool shit, but you're paying for it. But it's a door that is literally designed to resist an explosion.
Wow.
Like somebody's shooting an RPG at your door, and the RPG is going to bounce off it.
Mhm.
So if you've got a wall designed to resist that, then it might be worth investigating putting a lock on it that will also resist it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking something more similar or simple, like during the good times, you can get a contractor to make a nice river rock stone wall, just to look pretty and still resist things a little bit better. But they're still just like little stones with a bit of cement. There's nothing much behind it. It's not like it's solid stones, but it looks better. And it might be a little more fire resistant too.
Well, every layer slows somebody down.
Yeah, steel roof we didn't mention for fire protection, and yeah, it's just a harder entry than a regular asphalt roof. Alternate escape, we kind of touched on it there, but with the windows the way they are that we were talking about, and if you do have a fire in the house, I mean, maybe have one of those like extendable ladders on the upper floors to throw out the window and climb down.
Yep, and practice that. It's one thing to have it; it's quite another to actually put it into use. Plan how you're going to do it, right? Plan how you're going to get everybody in one spot, get them out the window, and then actually practice getting out the window. It's a fun family activity. Do that on Thanksgiving weekend. Practice getting out, and I say Thanksgiving just because that's usually when everybody's together and the weather's usually decent. But yeah, practice it, right? The best laid plans of mice and men don't apply when what's the old saying? Training goes out the window when reality comes in the door.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta ask Tyler, only because the stereotype. Is like storm shelters a bit of a thing down there where you are? I guess you're not really in tornado country or anything, but
Oh yeah, we're tornado country. I'd say maybe a little north, but yeah, we've got a storm shelter kind of set up in the basement. It's actually where they used to heat the house with the indoor wood stove. It's kind of got a brick inlay into the basement. And then even behind that, there's another enclosed brick room, and that's where they used to throw the wood in to get down to the wood stove. And yeah, we spent a couple nights in there this past summer, probably 3 evenings we had to go down there for tornado warnings. So.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm not too way off base there. That's good.
No, not at all. It's a commonplace around here. A lot of people with cellars and root cellars in the house and everything else. So.
Cool. So yeah, a couple things just to add to that. So obviously in bad times, if there is a power outage or whatever, emergency lights, whether it be battery backup, just battery powered, so you can flick it on at will. And the other thing I was going to mention, just have a means of communication so you can contact each other inside the house if need be, that if you're separated and you want to just get a message across. That's pretty much the only other thing I had for fortifications.
Right. Yeah, I think we hit most of it. I've got just a few spots. Maybe I'll put my 2 cents in. I guess just starting out, before maybe you do any fortifying on your house, sit down and really think about what you need to protect yourself from. I guess for us personally, and probably realistically for most people, it's armed robbery or breaking and entering, kind of knock and rush the door type scenario. So maybe have a baseball bat by the door or something like that. This is kind of U.S. specific, or I guess definitely is. Take advantage of getting your permit to carry. Keep your firearms. Probably more important to keep it on you at home, in my opinion. That's just as good of a chance that something bad happens there. And I guess at the very least, keep your gun safe organized. So if you do need to get in there and get stuff, I know we'll go to buddy's house to target practice, and they'll be opening the gun safe and they're catching ammo boxes and stuff's falling out, and it's going to be a nightmare if it's an emergency and you actually need to get in there to protect yourself.
Well, the fine motor skills go out the window under stress, right?
Yeah, exactly. So just be prepared there. Be conscious of locking your doors every night, and maybe be strategic about leaving a light on here or there, kitchen light inside, whatever it might be. Think about that and just make sure you're checking your doors every night before you go to bed. Another point, we talked about animals, along with dogs. I was thinking we feed the birds right outside the house here, and when they're busy, you'll see them coming and going all the time. As soon as they go away, there's something to look out for. I've heard the same about crickets too. Once they go quiet, there's something in the area. Maybe it's not a person, but maybe people aren't your threat. Maybe it's animals, predators, predators trying to hunt your livestock. So something else to pay attention to.
Oh yeah, we have around here too with the cougars in the area. Every single bird, like usually you have birds chirping all the time, and you'll have the forest go absolutely dead silent. And that's why cougars in town, because everybody just stops. It's actually kind of funny. It's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, we had a miniature donkey growing up. We kept in with the horses, and that was probably one of the best guard animals you could have. That thing was along the fence hee-hawing if there was anything going on. And we're planning on
donkeys and llamas, very territorial animals.
Very much so. Yeah.
Around my area, because it's all farmland around me. Every field that has livestock has a donkey in it. Because we're overrun by coyotes, so the donkeys do not like coyotes, and so it's I've actually seen them, like they'll just go and stomp one.
Yeah, they're very smart animals. I was always told that they used them up in the mountains for pack animals. One, because they're strong, but they're much more sure-footed than a horse. A horse you could lead right off the edge of a cliff. A donkey knows better.
Yeah, no, I mean,
animals.
We had the llama, of course, and he was really good. But even the alpacas work well. A stranger shows up, they get surrounded by about 5 of them right off the bat. Yeah. But yeah, the miniature donkey's good. I heard geese actually work as well.
Geese, yeah. We're planning on getting some peacocks. We're going to get some egg-laying chickens, and we've read that if you keep peacocks in with them, they're along the same line. They're territorial, and they start squawking as soon as something's going on. So
interesting.
Yeah. So that kind of takes care of the basic stuff. A few other things with your property or thinking about your property. Maybe try to get a rural setting if you aren't already on a homestead or a house. Less people, less problems. That's kind of the bottom line, I guess, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Keeping a good perimeter. I've got two good-sized decks on the back side of the house. Those would be a great lookout. Maybe that's something to think about for you too. Keep your yards cleaned. If you got a bunch of junk laying around, how easy is it to sneak up if you've got 30 broken down old cars in the front yard? But along the lines of that too, there's no cover if you need to get out of the house too. So maybe be strategic about where you leave things. We talked about the safe room, and then a few other ideas. I kind of walked around the shop thinking of an SHTF scenario. Chains and padlocks, good to have on the property. You can do a lot with those, just blocking things, keeping doors closed. I got a whole bunch of chain. My work scrapped out an overhead hoist, so I got about 60 feet of chain for nothing, and it's just in a box there. If I need it to hold 2 gates closed, great, I got it. If I need to chain it across the driveway to keep somebody out, serves a purpose there too.
It'll also mobilize a car really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or even to drag stuff. I mean, chain's a nice way to get around a log or whatever too. So
right. Yep. Talked about the kind of parking the truck at the end of the road. Same thing goes at the end of the driveway. Maybe you got an old loader tractor or something like that. You could push a pile of dirt across the driveway. Other cheap solutions would be kind of talk to homemade spike strip. Maybe just take a piece of plywood, pound some nails in it, flip it upside down in the driveway, cover it in leaves. So I don't know, anybody who's coming up the driveway, their plans are going to change when they get 4 blown out tires all of a sudden.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean it's like think of how many buildings nowadays have glorified spike strips across the places they don't want you to drive through, right?
Right. Yep. And last thing I was able to think about was cattle panels. I don't know if you guys are familiar with those, but that's what I use for most of my fencing around here. And that's just kind of a heavy gauge steel welded wire. Comes in 16-foot lengths, and I guess the generic cattle panel, like 6-inch by 6-inch squares, about 5 feet tall. And then you can get hog panels, which are narrower at the bottom and not as tall. But that stuff's heavy duty. That'd be great to, same thing, block a driveway or funnel people in where you want them to go. Maybe even nail it across your door. Go out there with some U nails and just pound it in your door. What do you think about?
There you go. There's lots of options. Of course, prevention is better than cure, as always.
Yep.
Keep them off your property is a whole lot better than having to deal with them on your property.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure we missed a few things. We'll hear about it, I'm sure. But anyways,
I would love to hear about it. I mean, tell me what we missed. Right? We love hearing. We love the feedback. I think we've put every review that has come in our show so far. So if you want us to talk about you, then tell us what we're doing. If you like it, if you don't,
that's what we're all here for, is to get a little bit better and more prepared, right?
And learn some stuff on the way. Well,
exactly.
So I guess off to the podcast challenge then. So Alan, what do you got?
At least rekey your deadbolts so that you know where all the keys are. You have control of all the keys, and then upgrade if you can to BHMA. So that's the Builders Hardware Manufacturers Association, grade 1 hardware for your locks. So that's the heaviest grade. That's the institutional stuff. The highest attack resistance. Consider planting some fast-growing trees such as poplars or cedars to redirect intruders to where you want them to go.
So actually, yeah, it's a good point, because when I was in Ontario, like I said, the backyard was barren when we moved in because they built the house and just knocked everything down. We put these trees called thieves poplars, so that's like spelled THEVE, and they grew about 8 feet a year. And so within a few years, we had these 30+ foot trees, and they're this, the stumps were about probably 8 to 10 inches across after 3 years, and they were like a rhizome, so they kept on like spreading through the ground of the root system, and a new tree would pop up like 4 or 5 feet later, and they were fast growing, they spread fast, and hey, it's fuel for the fire too, right? But I think they were maybe $40 a tree, and we got like 6 of them, and we had the backyard fence line covered right away.
Yep.
So yeah, worked well. Other than that, let's see here. Well, for shout outs and email iTunes reviews, we because we're missing the boss man today, we don't have any access to all that, so I'll have to skip all that today, I guess.
So if you did give us if you did send us an email or give us a review, thank you, and we'll get to it on the next episode. Now that I've just said that we talk about everyone.
Yeah. Well,
we may or may not be talking about you this week.
I'll have to get Aaron to me if he's back or he's offline still next week, but we'll see what happens. But,
yeah.
Well, I guess that's pretty much it. So I guess we'll bring episode 43 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can please help us out and take a few minutes to submit a review. It helps other people find us. You can also find us at prepperpodcast.ca and on Facebook.
We record these shows on StreamYard, and we broadcast them live on Facebook, which is pretty cool now. If you want an early peek at the show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast. Click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we are going live. That also applies for Facebook. So Facebook or YouTube, you'll see us live as we go. If you want to contact me directly, you can find me on Instagram at PPSWO.
Right on. Well, so Tyler, where can we find you?
Yeah, if you guys want to get a hold of me, I guess you can just email into the show, and they'll get you linked up with me. Happy to answer any homesteading, livestock related questions, or if you're in the area and maybe wanted to chit chat, I'd be open to that as well.
Yeah, actually, it was a bit of a discovery from our part too, as we discovered that 50% of our listeners right now are coming from the States. So we thought it was a good idea to get you on board anyway. So
Yeah.
There could easily be somebody in your local area.
Yeah, good deal. It'd be exciting to find out. So.
Cool. Well, if you need to reach me directly, you can email me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Canadian Patriot Podcast now and then. Also available on iTunes and YouTube. You can find us discussing more government waste, squirreling off on the odd firearms-related banter, and exposing the daily loss of freedoms we're facing. So thanks for joining us, and tune in for the next episode where we're going to be talking about cooking in power outages.
Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.